Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Tuesday. Tuesday, April 26th. And this is season 3, episode 32. And my guest today is going to be Jermey McGrady. He's a Rogers TV in London volunteer. He's also does he's a graphics operator for the London Knights games with Rogers, and he also does some color analyst work for Rogers TV for the London National. So, and he's a huge sports fan and obviously a London Knights fan. So I'm going to bring Jermey on in a minute, and we're going to talk a little OHL and maybe some Gold Junior Hockey League as well, and his time with Rogers TV in London as well. So just bear with me, guys, and I'm going to bring on Jermey McGrady. Hey, Jermey, how you doing?
I'm good. Yourself, Chris?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Anytime.
No problem. Nice jersey. Which player's jersey is that in the background?
Actually, I don't have a name or a number on the back of it. I went with a blank just because for me, I feel that having a name on the jersey, they're only really there for a good solid, in junior hockey at least, 3 to 4 years before they leave. So I feel having a blank jersey in junior hockey is the best route. That way you're supporting the team and not supporting the player.
Yeah, and that's what I got with mine. And mine's backwards too, like a blank too. So yes, I do that now with all my jerseys because I either get legends that are retired that played most of their career with one team, or I just keep them blank.
Right.
So, but I did put the Budweiser Gardens on for you in the background.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So I was in London on Sunday visiting family, and it's funny, the Knights come to Kitchener and I go to London, and then I'm away home about 20 to 6 on the 401. I'm going eastbound to Guelph, and there's the London Knights bus just heading towards Woodstock back to London after the game against Kitchener.
Yeah, they had a good game on Sunday. You know, you had Luke Evangelista getting on the board. He hadn't really scored yet so far this postseason, so he got on the board Sunday, and now Kitchener's maybe in a little bit of trouble here. They're, currently down 2-1, and London can maybe go 3-1 here tonight.
I absolutely, this is my opinion. If the Knights can win again tonight and go up 3-1, I think the series will be over in 5. But if Kitchener can somehow even it up 2-2, then it's going to go 6, maybe 7 games. So tonight is absolutely a must-win for Kitchener as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and with the Knights getting Brochu back right in time for the playoffs, I mean, from what I hear, he's not exactly still 100%. Like, he's battling through the injury that he suffered, but, it's a race to 16 wins for the OHL championship. So Brochu's going to be willing to lay down his body and sacrifice for the willing of the London Knights.
I was going to say, Antonio Stranges has done well. Evangelista has done well. And the Knights are getting some contribution because I find in the season they were relying on too much. But now if they can get a little bit of scoring from their second, third, and fourth lines, that will help too.
Absolutely. They've been in this postseason. They've been actually throwing in a few young rookies into their lineup. They've got Denver Barkey, their first-round draft choice from this past season. He's played really well this postseason. Oliver Bonk got his first career OHL goal this postseason on a nice shot from the point. So they're bringing in their youth, getting them some OHL playoff experience, and at the same time, ramping them up to help them boost for the next season as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm with the Goal Storm right now. They've only scored 1 goal in 2 games, and even George Burnett said their young players, the 16 and 17-year-olds, have actually been playing well. It's the 18 and 19 and the overagers that need to get it going, especially tonight against the Greyhounds at 7 o'clock at the Sleeman Center. So it's going to be a big night for OHL hockey, and I'm looking forward to it tonight.
Oh, yeah. Guelph and the Sioux will be a really good series.
But I'll be honest, people laugh at me, but I said Guelph would have been better off playing London in the first round. I'm not disrespecting the Knights. The Storm in the playoffs, it's not always seeding. To me, it's matchups. And to me, I feel the Guelph Storm match up better with London than they do with the Greyhounds. Because this year against the Greyhounds, they're including the playoffs, they're 2-6. Against London in the regular season, 7-3-1. And another factor too is not just the matchup, it's the travel too. Going 9 hours from Guelph to the Sioux. I know they're staying up their back-to-back games, but it would have been probably would have been a lot easier for this, not easier, but better for the Storm in the first round playing London. But you can't always control your matchups.
Yeah, I completely agree about the matchup scenario. I mean, London got lucky with having to face Kitchener because during the regular season in their 10 matchups, London went 6-4. And, there's just those teams that, like for example, the Windsor Spitfires, the number 1 seed, they had London's number. They had Guelph's number, but then
Yep.
the Sarnia Sting, who are playing Guelph and likely to be swept, the Sarnia Sting went basically 7-3 against the Knights. The Knights could not solve the goaltending of the Sarnia Sting. So London gets a lucky matchup here in round 1, and we'll see potentially if they make it into round 2 how they'll survive.
I was gonna say, but my OHL picks for the OHL championship could change in a couple weeks. Right now, I'm still going with the Hamilton Bulldogs to come out of the East, and as of now, the Windsor Spitfires, because I've seen all the teams in the Western Conference. Obviously, I haven't seen the East, but Windsor to me is the most balanced team. If they get good goaltending, they have good offense. They're a good, solid team.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at game 1 of that series, Sarnia only put 11 shots onto the Windsor netminder. And I'm trying to remember the guy. It's he's actually the former London backup, but anyway, the Windsor goalie.
Matt
Yes, Matt Anuska.
Yes.
Yes, Anuska. He can play lights out goaltending. I remember back in 2018. Now he was playing Junior B for the Waterloo Siskins, and he played the Nationals in the GOJHL final. And in Game 7, he was lights out, kept Waterloo in it, won the game, and that's how he got up to the London Knights. Didn't quite get enough playing time. Obviously, when you're behind Brett Brochu, it's kind of hard to do. And then gets traded to Windsor this season, and he's been putting up solid numbers and got a shutout on 11 saves in Game 1 of that series against Sarnia.
So, and they picked up a Storm player too, Jacob Malat. So Windsor's had some nice pickups this year as well, and they're going all in on it. So, have there been any OHL series right now that's kind of shocked you so far with the way they're going?
The one I would probably say is the Mississauga Steelheads and Barrie Colts matchup in the Eastern Conference. I mean, it's a 4-versus-5 matchup, so you can say it's not really a shocker considering the two teams, were kind of close. I mean, right at the beginning of the season, Mississauga was the number 1 seed right at the beginning of the season in the East. And then they slowly dipped off, and now the Barrie Colts, they won on the road, which is what you need in the postseason to take home ice. And the Colts won again last night, so they now lead that series. And they're a team they're a dark horse in the East. They've got Mac Guzda as their goaltender. I mean, he's currently with an injury, but having him in net, you've got Nathan Allenson, you've got Tyson Forrester back from the American League. I mean, they suffered a loss with Brant Clark getting down with injury, but otherwise, the Barrie Colts to me are a dark horse team in the East.
I did actually in my blog. I did an OHL blog on the first round. I did have Barrie over Mississauga in 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I originally am from Barrie, Ontario, so for me, I have a little bit of a connection to the Barrie Colts. My parents were season ticket holders for the Colts, so my favorite player growing up was Brian Little. And so he's one of those guys. And then you had Mark Scheifele. And to me, I feel that the Barrie Colts, history-wise, can be right up there with the London Knights when it comes to producing players into the NHL. You've got Aaron Ekblad, currently a star for the Florida Panthers. You've got Andrei Svechnikov playing for the Carolina Hurricanes. You've got goaltender in New Jersey and Mackenzie Blackwood playing solid. So the Barrie Colts are a team that produces a lot of good players, and Tyson Forrester is going to be the next one to make it into the NHL and be a good local boy from the Barrie Colts.
I'm just so glad the playoffs are back. Like tonight's the first playoff game at the Sleeman Center in 1,085 days. I was at the last game, which was Game 6 of the OHL final against Ottawa, and I'm thinking, okay, 2020, 2021, but man, oh man. So I'm actually appreciating the playoffs more than I did before.
And I think as sports fans, we all are, because, when the pandemic started and shut everything down, there was nothing for us to do. Like we were going into a stretch run, going into the postseason. And, now that we're on the other side of the pandemic and, sure, there's still cases going around, but we all are excited for the postseason because it's that stretch drive. You go on that run. There's all those emotions that you feel, and Guelph, so to speak, are kind of the defending champs of the West with them having no season last year. So in my mind, if Guelph can get past the Sioux, they can certainly make a run. And the postseason is always exciting, no matter what the year is. But especially coming off of a pandemic, fans are just excited that hey, there's postseason hockey.
Yes, definitely so. Anyways, Jeremy, I was just going to get into some questions. First one I wanted to ask, can you tell my audience just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 23 years old. I currently live in London, Ontario, as you previously mentioned. I volunteer for Rogers TV, doing all sorts of roles, mainly doing graphics for the London Knights. I also do some color commentary, as you mentioned, the odd time for the London Nationals Junior B. But myself personally, as a human, I'm just a big sports fan. I like watching sports all the time. I have a lot of sports video games. That's all I really play. I'm a big Toronto Maple Leaf fan. And when it comes to hockey, I'm basically an all Toronto sports fan. And I just love watching all sports for me because as a little kid, that's what I grew up doing. Like sports was my bloodline. It was something that I always loved doing. And even, you know, for me personally, like hockey is my number one sport. But
Yep.
personally, that's kind of all I am. I'm kind of a sports geek. That's all I kind of like to do. Other than that, there's not much really that I do otherwise other than watching and playing sports.
I know in the past London used to be 50-50. Do you find it's still 50-50 for Detroit, Toronto, or is it more Toronto because the Detroit teams have struggled the last 10 years?
When I first moved here, I would say right away I noticed 50-50 split. Because again, you have with it being halfway to Detroit and halfway to Toronto, there's that there is a lot of Detroit fans, but I'm also starting to see a sprinkle of Montreal Canadian fans here in London too. With Nick Suzuki being from here, there's that big connection. So I'm seeing a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans, but I'm seeing majority Detroit and Toronto. I mean, the last few years for the Red Wings haven't been exactly what fans like yourself have been used to having making the postseason, but in the next couple of years, I think they're going to be a dangerous team with the young kids that they have.
Definitely, hopefully, like I said, I still think it's going to take another 2 years for Eiserman to get them back in the playoffs. I think they need another 1 or 2 years of more strong drafts. Mo Sider has been great. Lucas Raymond has been great, but they need more help. Dylan Larkin's good. Tyler Bertuzzi's good, but they still need more firepower, and they still need more help on the blue line. And as for the goaltending, Alex, or I call him Ned, he's pretty good, but I don't know about bringing Grice back. So they do have some good prospects down in the farm system, but it's probably still going to take, I'd say, at least another 2 years. Optimistic, they should be in the playoffs 2 years from now.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I feel like you nailed it right on the head there with Eiserman. He's going to build himself a contending team. Right now the offense isn't quite there, but you've got Sider, who's likely going to win the Calder Trophy this year for
Should
Rookie of the
should
Year. I would consider it pretty much a lock with Michael Bunting going down with injury. I mean, I don't think he was really in it at the end of this season. I mean, he was at the start with the start that he had, but he faded off and he didn't quite get scoring. And Mo Sider is just going to be a monster in the next 2, 3, 4 years for the Red Wings. And again, the Atlantic Division, in my mind, is one of the toughest divisions in the NHL because you've got
definitely
Tampa Bay, you've got the
Boston.
Boston Bruins, you've got the Leafs, and the Canadians are just like Detroit. They're a young team that Carey Price in net. If you get a good Carey Price, Montreal's a dangerous team.
Definitely. That was going to lead to my next question I wanted to ask you, Jeremy. It's also national volunteer work with Rogers TV. How did you end up getting involved with volunteering with Rogers TV? I think you started in Barrie originally. And how's the experience been, and how long have you been with Rogers TV?
So I've been with Rogers for roughly now seven years. I got my start. I was in high school, and again, me being a sports fan, I kind of liked the behind the scenes portion. I liked seeing all the camera operators, and my dream was to be a sports broadcaster, to be a play by play guy. And so I thought, well, how do I kind of get myself into that opportunity, get myself in the door? And I saw that, Rogers TV, looks for volunteers. So I got an application, I submitted it in, and they, right off the bat, I didn't start right away doing OHL productions because they had so many volunteers doing it already that I was only doing studio shows. So back then, there was a morning show called Daytime that's kind of equivalent to the breakfast television in Toronto, kind of. And that's what I was doing for a long time. And I was doing that as a co-op during my high school years. So I was doing that during the majority of the year. And then I get the odd opportunity to do an OHL production and be at the now called Sadlin Arena up in Barrie. And then once I got through my first year of doing that, the second year I became a full-time OHL volunteer with the Colts. So I was doing their main game camera operator, and I had fun. And the overall experience so far with Rogers has been amazing. I mean, being in with four years up in Barrie and then another 3 years here in London, it's been an absolute blast. I mean, you get to see a hockey game for free, OHL.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And there's nothing like it. I mean, even doing baseball sometimes, here you get to do the London Major sometimes, and then Barrie you'd cover multiple events, and there's all sorts of opportunities, and volunteers are always welcome for Rogers TV.
Definitely. And how my story came in is a couple years ago, I volunteered with the Guelph Nighthawks of the Canadian League Basketball League, and they threw me in one game as a camera operator at halftime. I'm like, never done broadcasting, never done camera work before. Producers showed me what I needed to do, and they actually paid me for it, and they actually liked my work. And one of the volunteers, Steve Fay, with the Nighthawks, with Rogers as well, said, "Do you want me to put in a good word for you at Rogers?" And I said, "Yeah." And Jordan Gruber, who was their coordinator, gave me an opportunity. And I was 47 at the time, and I've never done broadcasting before. Never went to school for it, and they gave me an opportunity, and that's how I got involved with the Guelph Storm. And I've been doing camera work ever since then. So doing the Nighthawks led me to the Rogers TV, which has now led me to my podcast, which I started a couple years ago, which has led me to the National Basketball League of Canada as a media affiliate. So Rogers TV has changed my life, and that's thanks to the Guelph Nighthawks giving me an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without Rogers TV, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in, and neither, would both of us. Like Rogers has provided that lifeline for us and provided, friendships that will last a lifetime. I mean, I have friends that are on the London Knights crew that, I'm going to cherish forever. And we always have fun. Like during the regular season, Guelph, London, and Kitchener all play home games on Friday nights. So there's always that competition. So we would start setting up all the equipment for a 7:30 game at 1:30 in the afternoon. And not all the volunteers obviously can make it, because they've got other jobs. But, for me, I'm lucky where I'm able to be there, and I'm there from 1:30 in the afternoon all the way till 11:30 at night. Setting up the camera, taking it down. So for me, that's the fun part is actually being in an empty arena before everyone gets in there. When you're doing the setup and then taking everything down, you get to see kind of everything behind the scenes. You get to see the players warming up, playing keep up with the soccer ball. You get to see the players stretching. You get to see all of the little behind the scenes nooks and crannies that you wouldn't see if you were just attending games.
Absolutely, Jeremy. Absolutely. And I've been lucky enough. I made some contacts too with some of the coaches for the Storm. So after the season's over, hopefully it won't be for a while. I'm going to probably have one of the Storm assistant coaches come on, and I've made a lot of contacts and, like you said, friendships. And to me, it's not work; it's something I enjoy. Everybody wants to help each other, and I have nothing but good things to say about Rogers TV. And one of the guys, Amber Campbell, who's been there for 7 years as a camera operator in Guelph. She helped me out right away, and they made me feel part of the team right away, even though I had no experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of key thing with volunteering with Rogers is you have people that are willing to help you no matter what your situation is. Like you're able to learn how to do something a different way. You get to learn, how they do it compared to how you do it. And for me, like the Knights crew, it's a lot of fun. Like we're there and we get to do a lot of our fun. We go out for dinner sometimes before the games because we get done nice and early. And so those, like you mentioned, those friendships are a truly amazing thing.
Absolutely. This leads to my next question. I was going to ask you, can you just tell my audience just a little bit what a graphics operator does during an OHL game for the London Knights at the Bud Gardens? And just tell us, audience, a little bit of your color analyst work with the London Nationals, who are currently trailing Chatham 2-1 in the best of seven series for the Southern Cup playoffs.
Yeah, so being a graphics operator, meaning that I operate any type of graphic or text bubble that you see on your TV screen. So when you're watching a sports game and you're seeing the score on the TV, that's what I'm operating. I'm operating when a goal is scored, there's an animation that flips over that says goal. So I have to press that button. And doing graphics is actually quite fun because you're actually being able to sit there. You're not doing camera, which having to go back and forth. I'm sitting in a chair with a computer in front of me, having to make sure that I stop the clock when it comes to a whistle, having to put in the goals, put in who got the goals, who got the assists. It's a lot. It's a lot of work, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun work because you get to actually dive deep into the stats. You're looking at everything. You're making sure all the graphics are right, and you're all doing it live, which is kind of another fun thing to do. When you're doing a pre-tape show or something along those lines, you're not exactly having to worry about a lot of things because you already have it built. When you're doing graphics live, you're having to make sure that everything is going in correctly. And the nice thing too at Bud Gardens is there's an actual what we call a electronic data feed, which the score clock in Budweiser Gardens provides the time and the penalties automatically in to my graphics machine. So I don't have to stop the clock. I don't have to push a button to stop the clock. Everything stops for me. They put the penalties in for me. It tells me the player. All I have to do is put in the infraction, whether that be a hooking call or a tripping call. And for me, graphics is a lot of fun. You get to just sit there and enjoy it. For some people, it is tough because it's a lot of technology that you're having to face. But other than that, it's a lot of fun to do. Like my favorite thing to do is when a team scores, I get to hit a button that says they scored. And which, when you're seeing it on TV, it's like you would think nothing of it, but in reality, it's actually someone behind the scenes pushing a button or clicking the mouse, making that thing happen.
Definitely. And see, and that's the thing too. As a fan, you don't see how much work there is in a setup and tear down. For the most part, right now with my schedule, I don't normally do the setup, but I always try to stay for the tear downs and that. So eventually, I probably will start to try to get there early enough to do the setups. But it's a lot of work putting something to a broadcast together and then tearing it down after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned, for us, our crew call for a night's broadcast is 1:30 to 2 o'clock on a Friday night game at 7:30. So that requires us being there well ahead of time, bringing in 6 to 7 cameras, the tripods, all the equipment, the ice microphones, and our commentators' supplies. And so we have to all have that in. And we normally have all of that set up in time by around 4 o'clock, which gives us time to have some food, be able to go into the media room and just have some conversations with a few of the media staff as well, which is quite fun.
Oh, I forgot to ask. I hate that. I should have wrote down the question I was going to ask you. If it comes back later again, I guess I'll remember that too. I was going to say, oh yeah, now I remember. I know with the Gulf Storm we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we have 6 cameras plus a robotic camera up in the press box now.
Yeah, I funny enough, I remember I've done now 3 or 4 broadcasts in Guelph before. Like
Okay.
during my time in Barrie, we would actually go to Oshawa to cover a Generals game. So I've gone to, obviously done productions in Barrie, Oshawa, did one in Mississauga, or did 2 in Mississauga, my bad. And I've done a couple in Guelph and then obviously London. So I've done, 4 to 5 different OHL markets covering broadcasts. And going down to Guelph was quite fun because, for us, there'd be 4 or 5 of us coming down from Barrie to help the Guelph crew when they were short volunteers. So we'd come down and have fun at the Sleeman Center because the Sleeman Center provided the crew food at the time. I don't know if they still do or not.
Yes, they do. They still do.
In which I remember I always got the chicken fingers and fries from the Sleeman Center, which to me were always the best there. And at the time, it's no longer this producer, but the producer at the time would always provide like desserts. She would always bake food for the crew.
Oh, geez, I missed out on that.
Yeah, I forget exactly her name, but she would always be baking for the crew so that we could have, the Sleeman Center dinner, and then we could have dessert, whatever she'd make. She'd make cookies or whatever, but that was always fun. And I can still remember the Sleeman Center quite well because I would, at the time, where that robotic camera was, it was actually, before it was a robotic camera, it was a ISO camera and the broadcaster's camera. So it would roll
Yes.
back during the commentator's time during intermissions, and then during the game it would roll forward, and you would be doing isolation, in which, for your listeners who don't know what isolation camera is, it's following one player. So it's like if you're watching an NHL game where one camera is strictly following Dylan Larkin, it's following Austin Matthews, it's following one player, and that's your entire job the whole night, is focusing in on one player the entire time and having fun with it.
Definitely. Okay, and before I get to a couple more questions, Jeremy, I'm just going to show everybody a little bit of your work as a color analyst with Rogers TV. This is from courtesy of Rogers TV, and the last game you just did a couple days ago from the Western Fair Sports Center.
TV, as we get set for Game 3 of the Southern Cup semifinals between the visiting Chatham Maroons and the London Nationals. And I don't even know what to think about this series anymore, Jeremy. It's back and forth. Nationals just dominate Game 1. Chatham dominates Game 2. And that pretty much brings us to the story of the game right off the bat here. It's anybody's series right now. And story of the game is capitalizing on chances.
Absolutely. I mean, in Game 1, London potted 8, and in Game 2, Chatham potted 6.
I was going to say, can you hear that okay, Jeremy?
Yep, I can hear that perfectly.
How many years have you been working with Kyle and doing the national games on Rogers TV in London?
I've been doing that for the last 2 seasons. They normally have other people doing it on a regular basis, but when the opportunity comes to fill in on a broadcast, they normally message me right away saying, "Hey, we need someone to do nationals." And for me, it's always a fun thing to do. Because the Junior B game, it's an opportunity to actually do color. I don't get to do it during OHL games, but this is where you get your foot in the door. Where if on a night where, someone on the night's crew is away, I could fill in right away and do color. And I love doing color personally rather than play-by-play, because doing play, like, I can do both. Play-by-play, you're having to do a lot of the talking. Color, you're providing the inner details. You're providing, the play that's going on. You're describing, the pace of the game. But as the play-by-play guy, you're just solely describing the game. You're describing what's going on as it's happening. Where the color person is, again, describing those little inner details, describing, if a goaltender makes a save, he was in the right position and all that. And so for me, I love doing color because I didn't play the game at a junior level or anything like that, but I've played, when you play the game, kind of what these players are thinking. And so the Nationals currently, down 2-1 to the Chatham Maroons. And Chatham's got a good, solid team. They're not afraid to be physical. And the Nationals, they need to be able to step up. They've lost a couple of guys due to suspension, but they're going to be able to storm back again. And the Nationals have kind of had a goalie carousel of themselves because of the London Knights, with Brochu going down with injury. Owen Flores, who was was also the backup goalie for the Nationals. So he had to go spend time with the Knights. And then the other goalie for the Nationals, Aiden Barry, he had to go up for the London Knights as well. As you can see there in the video, Barry's had a bit of a tough go during this last little stretch because he's played so many games with both the Nationals and the Knights. So there'd be a little bit of wear and tear on Aiden Barry, but he's a goaltender that's very good, and I won't be surprised if he finds an OHL job next year.
I was going to say, and Chatham won this game 5-2, so they're up 2-1, and I believe the Nationals take on Chatham tonight at 7:00, which is a huge game because they don't want to be like Kitchener and fall behind 3-1 in this series. So tonight's going to be a really key matchup.
Absolutely, and they need to find the back of the net. I mean, in Game 1, the Nationals scored 8, and then in Game 2, Chatham scored 6. So it's kind of been a high-scoring series so far. Game 3, yeah, it was 5-2, but it was really 4-2 because the fifth one wasn't in the empty net. But the Nationals, I found on that Saturday night there for game number 3, it was them. They never quite found their confidence. They had it for a little bit in the second period, but otherwise Chatham had the puck most of the night, and they were able to find those lucky bounces.
I was gonna say, and who are you picking to win the Southern Cup from the junior? What is it? Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League.
For me, I would have to think I would always pick a Western Conference team because, whether it be London or whether it be Leamington, I always find it's always one of the Western teams because the Western Conference is always the more physical side. So whoever comes out to me from the West this year, to me, is going to win the Sutherland Cup. Because even though you look at the Central and the East conferences, because the GOJHL, it's a little bit interesting compared to the OHL and the National Hockey League, where there's, the two conferences, and the GOJHL, there's 3. And then they've changed the playoff format where the winner of the West, the winner of the Central, and the winner of the East this time around the 3 will all play each other in a round robin. And then the top 2 records from that round robin will go and play in the Sutherland Cup.
Okay,
So they'll play 6 additional games. So technically so then they'll go into a championship kind of round robin, and then they'll go into a championship series in which the series ends up being a best 2 out of 3. So instead of it being a traditional 7-game series for the Sutherland Cup, it's going to be a best of 3 for this year.
Wow. Well, at least it's back because it was shut down for a year and a half, 2 years. It was shut down as long as the OHL was.
Yeah, and I mean for those Nationals players, and they had the same deal as the OHL players did. They got shut down. They were able to practice a bit during the lockdown because that's what was allowed, but then it got locked down again, so they never quite got to experience a full-on season. In which it's sad for those players who would have been in their third or second seasons. Now they're in their fourth or last years, and they get to miss a year of hockey, which is unfortunate, but you can't really change the circumstances.
Okay. I've got a viewer that wants to ask you a question. He's from Windsor. He's a Spitfire fan. His name's Christian. He wants to know, what courses did you take in your first year of college or university?
So for me, I went to Fanshawe College and I took television and film production. And during the first year, you get to experience both. You get to experience TV and you get to experience film. So when you're doing the TV side, you get to kind of do a fake TV show and kind of learn the basics of camera operating and graphics and directing and being a producer, which the benefit of being at Rogers before I went into college was that I knew all of that stuff. I knew how to operate a camera, where some people didn't know how to zoom in and zoom out on a camera when I was in my first year of college, in which for me it was kind of easy to do, in which the professors kind of knew at the time, okay, well, if they've done Rogers, they kind of know what they're doing. And so during the first year, you had to do also 30 hours of Rogers TV. Rogers TV and Fanshawe have a deal together where students have to do 30 hours of Rogers TV so that they get experience out in the TV side of things. So I did that for my 30 hours, in which they kind of gave me the 30 hours even before I even really started, because they knew that I was going to be there anyway, so they might as well just give me the hours. But when it comes to the courses for college, and learning how to edit videos, learning how to produce videos, learning how to make a TV show, you basically learn everything from scratch. You learn how to make graphics from scratch. You get to learn live video. You get to learn everything that you would from a newscast perspective. And then you get to learn things from a film side too, like learning how, depth of field, learning how to, learning certain things that filmmakers do, and then learning things that TV crews do. So it's certainly fun when it comes to a college aspect of things. It was a 2-year program, and luckily for me, my second year was just at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was able to graduate right before the pandemic and leave Fanshawe with my head held high.
Okay. And I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions. This one I wanted to get on you. I'm going to put you on the spot. Prediction for the Western Conference Final and Eastern Conference Final, and who's your pick for the 2022 OHL Championship as of now?
So the West Final, I'm going to pick the number 1 and 2 seed in the Windsor Spitfires and the London Knights. I think the path will be easier for the Knights than it will be Windsor in my estimation, because let's say that the Guelph Storm beat the Sioux Greyhounds. Well, that means Guelph will end up facing Windsor, in which London will get the easier of the teams, which will be closer to them, which again, London will have an easier time with the matchups where Guelph might not. But again, you have Owen Bennett, who was an absolute monster against London during the regular season for Guelph. I think he can easily steal a series for the Guelph Storm. But I think in the West, I've got London and Windsor. And then in the East, I've got the Hamilton Bulldogs. Like you said, they're just kind of a runaway team. Mason McTavish, they've got all of that star power. In the East, I'm going with Kingston and Hamilton. I think it's going to be a beautiful thing to see Shane Wright versus Mason McTavish. And then when it comes to an OHL final, I think you're going to see Windsor versus Hamilton. And I think I got Windsor in 5 for the OHL championship. I think a team like Hamilton, they do so well in the regular season, but come, the OHL final, they might be banged up. And I think a team like Windsor is going to be a team that's going to be healthy and fresh and good for an OHL championship and make their way, end up going to the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, and you know what? To be honest, I would say 12 of the 15 years, the winner of the OHL championship has pretty well come from the Western Conference. Obviously, Hamilton won in 2018. Oshawa's won recently, but majority of the OHL championships come from the Western Conference. But it's no disrespect to the East. It's just right now, I would say the last 15 years, the Western Conference has been the stronger conference in the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember back in 2013, the OHL final between the Barrie Colts and the London Knights, and those two teams had absolute star power. The Knights had Michael Hauser as their goaltender back then. The Barrie Colts had Matthias Niederberger as their goaltender, and that was a team that had a young Aaron Ekblad and a young Mark Scheifele on that team. And the Colts took it all the way to Game 7. They were banged up badly against the Knights, and the Knights ended up winning Game 7 with 0.1 seconds left on the clock in the third period of Game 7, which is pretty remarkable thing to remember. And for Colts fans, that kind of still stings to this day, because in Colts fans' minds, that clock read 0, and that game could have gone to overtime, and Barrie could have gone to the OHL champion, could have gone to the Memorial Cup, but the London Knights did, and unfortunately, they didn't win it that year, but nonetheless, the Knights have 2 Memorial Cups under their name, and the Barrie Colts are still waiting for their first.
Yep. And you know what? Windsor has won 3 cups since 2009, but they don't, it's no disrespect to the Knights, but they seem to get more credit than Spitfires. And Windsor, they won back to back. And you know how hard it is. London had the greatest junior A team in 2005 and dominated, but they saw how hard it was to repeat. And that's why when somebody repeats, that's special, because junior A hockey, there's such a turnover. It's hard to repeat as a champion in that league. And I don't think the Spitfires still get enough credit for their organization the past decade.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to remember that the Spitfires had Taylor Hall on their team. And I remember the Barrie Colts, again, OHL final against the Windsor Spitfires. And this was at the time where Taylor Hall was going to be the number 1 overall pick. He is this absolute superstar. And he came into Barrie, and Windsor took 2 games from Barrie, and Barrie fans were throwing craft dinner on the ice towards the Windsor players, in which, at that time, Barrie was more known at the time for being a more physical, rough and tough style team that, sure, they could score the goals, but they were also physical. But when you had Taylor Hall on that team, he was just too much to handle. And so that was kind of an interesting storyline back then when, the Barrie fans threw craft dinner on the ice. But yeah, the Windsor Spitfires are a very underestimated team. You've got Mark Savard as the head coach. He's a guy that, had a good NHL career, got cut short due to concussions, but to me, he's the perfect fit in Windsor. He's coaching them well, got Matt Anuska as the goaltender, getting a starting job, and he's playing well. So to me, the Spitfires can very easily go on a run in this first round. I think they'll sweep Sarnia, and then we'll see how it goes for round number 2 and then get to the conference final.
Definitely. Another comment before we wrap this up. I would love to talk to you for 2 hours today, but I've got to get ready to get to the Sleeman Center shortly. But Christian from Windsor wanted to say we have an incredible tough path to the OHL Championship, but the series against London and Hamilton, if they happen, is what I look forward to the most. North Bay would be extremely fun as well, and they have a really good hockey club too. And I can't wait to next year we see the Eastern Conference teams come back to the West cities again too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Knights got a bit of a lucky break this season. They actually got to face the Barrie Colts during the regular season due to the COVID schedule having to go around. They had to try to find another team to play because they didn't want to go over to the States as many times. So they found a slot where they could go into Barrie and play a regular season game, which I went to Barrie for that game to watch, and the Colts ended up winning that game. I don't remember the score that night, but nonetheless, it will be exciting to see the Eastern Conference teams back next year, just because you only get to see them once a year in your home building, and so it's going to be certainly fun to see the Eastern Conference teams both at Budweiser Gardens and at the Sleeman Center as well.
I've been mentioning this to guys in the OHL, and I'm like, I would like to see the West play the Eastern Conference teams twice in Eastern cities and twice in the Western cities, 4 games a year. I don't know why the OHL can't do that, 4 games a year.
Yeah, I mean, I like your point there. I think that the thing is for them is, they kind of were always going by the NHL method, which was when you play the other conference, you only need to really face them twice because otherwise you need to focus on the teams closer to you. But with the Ontario Hockey League, like the Barrie Colts have bit of an exception to that because they play the Owen Sound Attack, who are in the West. They play each other normally 6 times a year, but that's normally just because of travel, because it's easy. It's less travel to go from Barrie to London than it is Owen Sound to Barrie. Barrie to Owen Sound's maybe an hour bus ride, where London to Barrie would be 3-4 hours. So Barrie kind of gets lucky in that sense where they get to play a Western team more often than they do maybe an Ottawa 67s or a team like the Kinston Frontenacs.
Okay. And my last question, you already answered the first part of it about your favorite sport teams. But who are some of your favorite athletes? And where can my audience find you on social media? And do you have any advice for anybody that's looking to become a volunteer with Rogers TV? If you want to say something about becoming a part of the Rogers TV family.
Yeah, for sure. Your audience can find me pretty much on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Jermey McGrady. It's a pretty simple thing because, again, I spell my name differently than what most people with their names with the name of Jeremy. Because normally you would spell Jeremy Jeremy, in which I spell mine Jermey, which really, if you're pronouncing it, it's Jeremy, but I say it as Jeremy just because that's how it's pronounced with the regular spelling. But yeah, you can find me on social media at Jeremy McGrady. I do try to post frequently on my Instagram and Facebook, and I do a little bit sometimes on Twitter as well when the timing's right. But then when it comes to my favorite athletes, when it comes to hockey, my favorite athlete right now, I would have to say, is Austin Matthews. I have one jersey of his. I also have a John Tavares, but athlete in hockey, it's Austin Matthews. My favorite baseball athlete, I would have to say, is Bo Bichette of the Toronto Blue Jays. When it comes to NFL, my favorite athlete in the National Football League is Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan. Soccer, my favorite soccer athlete, don't really have one, but I would have to say I like the way that Alphonso Davies plays the game. He's a very fast player, but yeah, those are kind of the athletes that I like. And then when it comes to volunteering with Rogers, for those of you who are listening here on this podcast, I would say absolutely go for it, because Rogers TV, they welcome you with open doors. They take you anytime, any place, anywhere. They're always looking for volunteers. They always put it up on the broadcast that we're looking for volunteers, because there's always that opportunity for those who are, sitting at home wanting to maybe learn how the behind the scenes process works for sporting events and newscasts. And Rogers TV provides that for you. We always air bingo on Monday nights at 8:00. We always are airing cooking shows, nature shows, and there's always those opportunities for volunteers to learn those types of things. So it's, you can head to rogerstv.com/volunteer, fill out an application, and, you'll get contacted and you'll learn the tricks to being a Rogers TV volunteer.
Okay. Jeremy, like I said, I would have loved to talk to you more, but I got to head down to the Sleeman Center shortly, and I'm looking forward to the game tonight. I hope the Knights have a good game against Kitchener, and the London Nationals can even up the series with Chatham. But I definitely would like to have you back on again in the future, and maybe talk a little more about the Gold Junior Hockey League as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Anytime, Chris.
Okay, well, I hope you have a great night and enjoy the hockey games, and we'll see you on social media really soon. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Jeremy.
Yep,
You
you're
too.
welcome.
Bye. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast with Jeremy McGrady. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeremy McGrady, and he's also you can check out rogerstv.com/volunteers if you'd like to volunteer with Rogers TV as well. Just to wrap this podcast up, my next live seat with CDP podcast to be announced. I was supposed to do a show tomorrow night, but my guest got ill. His name is Nate Brown. He's from the Detroit Hockey News. He covers the Red Wings. So Nate is going to reschedule with me. So again, my next live with CDP podcast to be announced. Okay, so stay tuned. And also, guys, Game 3 of the first round series between the Greyhounds and the Storm tonight at 7 o'clock. Face off at the Sleeman Center. I'll be behind the camera, and the game is obviously on Rogers TV here in Guelph. Same with the Knights and Kitchener Rangers on Rogers TV in the Kitchener London area as well. Kitchener London, it's 2-1 Knights right now, and Guelph is down 2-0 to the Hounds. So this is a big game for the Guelph Storm tonight. You don't want to fall behind 3-0. I know they did that before against London in 2019 and did the reverse sweep, but I don't like their chances of doing a reverse sweep against these Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds who've owned Guelph this year, really 6-2 record against Guelph. So I'm hoping and Luca Profaka will be back in the lineup for the Storm tonight. And it looks like Jacob Oster, as of now, is going to be the starting goalie for Guelph tonight as well. So I hope you guys can tune in to Rogers TV at 7 o'clock. Steve Fitzsimmons, Ryan Drury, Trevor Pryor, and yours truly behind the camera. And I'm looking forward to a good game tonight. And before I go, guys, I just wanted to let you know, thank you to everybody watching this on my YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe notification if you haven't. Thank you to everybody for watching this on Facebook Live and on Twitter at Chris DePame. And also, my podcast will be downloaded to my podcast will be audio version will be downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and my LinkedIn page as well. And guys, you can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I post a lot of content on my TikTok page as well. And before we go, guys, I'm just going to finish up the comments here. Christian, thank you for watching. I always appreciate it. Awesome. Nice to hear from you guys. Have a great night and good luck, Storm. Thanks, Christian. Good luck for the Spitfires. You guys are taking on the Sting tonight in Sarnia, Game 3. I think the Spits are up 2-0 in that series. And Christian, thanks for the information about Rogers. It's a great place to volunteer, Christian. I'm not sure if they're the Rogers TV in Windsor. I think it's your TV or Cogeco. I'm not sure. And let's see, Christian's last comment. I'll switch over just to see how you're doing. Go Spits. All right. Okay, guys, that's about it for my podcast. But again, I want to say thank you to my guest, Jeremy McGrady, for coming on season 3, episode 32 of Live with CDP podcast. Enjoy the hockey games tonight, guys, and we'll talk to you guys soon. I will make an announcement on my next podcast show. I'm hoping to do one more this week, but if not, next week for sure. So, all right. Thanks, Jeremy, for coming on. Everybody watching us or listening to it later on audio form, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Again, thank you, everybody, for watching Live with CDP podcast, and we'll talk to you guys soon on social media.